Good morning from Toronto-Pearson International Airport. My name is Alex, and welcome back to the channel. Today, it's back to the archives for a trip from January this year, where I'm flying with Air Canada's flagship and largest aircraft, the Boeing 777-300ER. The 777-300ER first joined Air Canada's fleet in 2007, and they now fly 19 of Boeing's largest twin jet that's currently in service. Air Canada mainly uses these on their busier international routes, out of Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, but you can also find them on the occasional domestic flight too. This is a pretty exciting flight for me personally, because despite flying all over the place in the past decade, it's been over 8 years since I last flew a 777. The intro shots are a little sparse today because I'm rushing on a really tight connection from Montreal, where I had just about 10 minutes to get from gate to gate. Long legs really helped me out this time. We'll be flying on board one of Air Canada's newest 777s today, a 4-year-old aircraft registered as Charlie Foxtrot Juliet Zulu Sierra, having been delivered to Air Canada in April 2016. Fin 748, as this aircraft is otherwise known, is also one of the 7 777s in a high-density configuration, with a dozen fewer business class seats and about 60 more economy ones in their place. I made it just in time to get that gate shot and board with Zone 5, so let's go see what it's like to fly with Air Canada's high-density 777.
Well, thank you for doing what you do.
Now, any frequent flyer with Air Canada knows that Zone 5 is pretty much a death sentence for trying to get any sort of cabin shot, so I'll take a look around a bit later in the flight. For now though, my seat over to Calgary is 20K. In standard economy class, Air Canada offers 31 inches of seat pitch on their 777s. On a domestic flight, that's pretty generous, but for someone who's quite tall like myself, that's about my personal minimum for any sense of comfort. The seats are also quite narrow as well, but I think the engine view here more than makes up for it. These seats all have adjustable headrests, and in-seat power is available too. I also lucked out big time with a free middle seat, so this actually ended up being pretty comfortable. Please enjoy the sound from those GE90s as we depart Toronto, starting up, taxiing, and taking off from runway 05.
My name is Vicky Warren, the service director on this flight, shortly departing for Calgary. I have for today's fleet split service in English and French. Sur le Québec, pour que votre appareil soit récupéré sans danger. Your safety is our top priority. Please take a moment to watch the following demonstration outlining safety procedures for this aircraft. As we find headsets connected to portable electronic devices will be removed. Pour cette sécurité et notre priorité, prenez le temps de regarder la démonstration suivante sur le réseau de sécurité propre à cet appareil. Veuillez maintenant
Like I said earlier, Air Canada has two configurations on their 777-300 ERs. At the front of economy class though, you don't really get a sense of just how many seats are on this plane. In the seat back pocket, Air Canada had a surprisingly lengthy literature package. Included is the standard safety card, duty-free catalog, in-flight magazine, a donation envelope for the Air Canada Foundation, and their buy on board menu. The snack service started shortly after departure, and I went for a cup of coffee and some Pringles. I also bought an Air Canada Bistro voucher from their website during booking, which saves you a bit of money on onboard food purchases. Today though, I wanted to see what their meal tray was like. It's essentially leftover business class food that you can buy. I went with the breakfast choice of an omelette with potatoes and sausages, which didn't look terribly appetizing. The omelette itself was pretty tasty, but the rest was just flavorless and not so good. If you're genuinely hungry, I think the meal tray is worth going for, but I'll be steering clear of the omelettes in the future. Air Canada's high-density 777 seats a whopping 450 people in 3 classes. Signature class at the front seats 28 passengers in a 1-2-1 configuration. Premium Economy, located just behind the second set of doors, seats 24 passengers in a 2-4-2 layout. Economy makes up the vast majority of the aircraft, with 398 seats and 3 separate cabins in a fairly tight 3-4-3 configuration. In this layout, each economy seat has just 17 inches of width, which, for comparison's sake, is slightly narrower than those on a 737. For the long-haul routes that these aircraft operate, I can't imagine that's terribly comfortable. These lavatories in the very back of the aircraft are surprisingly roomy. Headroom is a bit of an issue as usual, but it's not awful. That all being said, I do feel bad for the cabin crew. It's gotta be a challenge for them, working to serve that many people from just a few galleys. The 777 on the Toronto to Calgary route isn't exactly a normal thing, but thanks to the grounding of a certain demonetizable aircraft, Air Canada was really strapped for capacity at the time. So, for most of the past winter, they put their largest aircraft on the route. It kinda makes sense. They can basically combine 2 or 3 A320s worth of people into a single flight, and free those aircraft up for other routes. The in-flight entertainment on the 777s is pretty nice too, with a headphone jack and USB port. The software has also been updated to the newer version found on the A220s. The media selection is pretty diverse as usual, but my favorite part is the interactive moving map. Since this flight was about 3.5 hours long, the crew came around again before landing with a second drink service, and I had a cup of Coke. Pretty soon after, we began our descent into Calgary, accompanied by, again, my favorite part of the new in-flight entertainment. Here's our arrival into a snowy Calgary, Alberta, landing on runway 35 right. Overall, this was a pretty nice flight with Air Canada. The crew on board were really nice. I can't imagine what it's like having to serve 3 separate economy cabins, but they were in really good spirits the whole flight. That engine view was fantastic too. I love the sounds of the GE90, but next time I'll definitely be sitting further up for the full experience. The cabin though is certainly something. While it does look nice, with mood lighting and up-to-date IFE, 10 across is just a bit tight for the 777. Air Canada finished the cabin refits on the 777 fleet a while back, so sadly, all of the 300 ERs and the 6 200 LRs now have the 343 layout. Since the middle seat was free though, I thankfully didn't quite get the full high-density 777 experience, but the fact that I constantly had one shoulder on the seat next to me is indicative enough. Now obviously that was just fine for this flight across Canada, but man, I would not want to be sitting here on a completely full flight across the Pacific. In the end, it was a rare treat to fly the 777 on a domestic route, especially to my hometown. After 8 years, it's still an absolute beast of an aircraft, and for what it was, this really was a nice flight. Thank you very much for watching this trip report with Air Canada's Flagship. As always, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you next time.